radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke Radio for the masses. Yeah, man. How you doing? Let's do this. Today's Thursday, March 5th, 2020. 65 days into the new year, only 301 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? All right. Tonight. Well, first. Tonight we are now broadcasting live on YouTube, live on Twitter, live on Facebook, in addition to KGRA, TalkStream Live, Spreaker, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. That's right. We figured it out. It ain't easy. But hello, everybody out there. And let's do this. And we tested all day today. Thought we had everything ironed out, and of course, right before showtime, things just weren't quite right. But we should be live up everywhere. And Rita says Facebook and Twitter are okay. I'm waiting for reports to come in from Drew, and I'm not going to worry about any of that. If it's happening, it's happening. I'm going to do the show and have fun. Okay, let's go. Yes, tonight, very special guest. It is Quittspiracy Part 2 with Jason Quitt. Part 2 from our Quittspiracy special that we did last week. We had a long list of conspiracies that we were going to jump into, and we ran out of time. That is always the question, right? Jason is a graduate of the Institute of the Energy Wellness and a student of the Algonquin Shamanism, has been training and working with many teachers, shamans, and traditional healers from around the world. Jason is also the author of Forbidden Knowledge, Revelations of a Multidimensional Time Traveler, and the Egyptian Postures of Power, the Ancient Qigong System, and the Yusuf Codes, Sacred Geometry Mandalas. His website is The Crystal Sun, and I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only JQ, Jason Quitt. Jason, how are you, man?
I'm doing very, very good. I'm currently in Miami, Florida, enjoying the weather. So another Fader show with me in Florida.
Yeah, you know, we all want to be you, Jason. But the thing is, as beautiful as Toronto is, yeah, Miami, and I love Toronto, man, but you got to get out of there once in a while, and hanging out in Miami for a little bit to get your feet back under you is a pretty good thing to do.
Especially when the day before I left, I had to shovel 2 feet of snow.
That's what I'm talking about. Let me ask you this before we get it. Let's talk about the conspiracy of the weather for a second, which is this. You leave your hometown that is buried under snow, and then you go to a tropical environment. Right now you're in Miami. How many hours or minutes does it take to forget about the snow?
Instantly.
Instantly. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it's weird how the mind works. It will literally forget what snow is. It's like instantaneous. And there's something else. I want to ask you about this. When you're in a snow environment, there is a smell, the frozen ice smell, right? The melting snow into water smell on concrete outside. There's a smell after a fresh snowfall, right? There's a smell. And when you get onto a plane and a couple of hours later, you step off the plane and you get the humid smell of the tropics in your nose. Isn't it crazy that the immediate smell that you get of Miami?
Oh, yeah. It's like a sweetness. You have this kind of sweetness of the palm trees in the air and the sweetness of the ocean. And when you're in the snow, when the snow is melting with the sun on it, with the UV, you're getting ozone release. So you can smell that. It's almost like a fresh smell in the air of this ozone smell, which is also pretty good.
But it's so fun when you go from that, because you notice it immediately. Immediately, the smell of Miami. It's crazy. We're going to Las Vegas after the show tonight. And there is an odor here in Los Angeles. And no matter where you fly around the world, you step off the plane and go, oh man, that's what real air is. And we get to go to Vegas, and you drive or fly, it doesn't matter. But the second you get out of the car in Vegas, you have that clean desert, dry, non-pollutant air, and it's immediate. I can't wait. I'm going to have it in a few hours. Looking forward to it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But I want to say there's something strange in the air. And I don't know if this is a conspiracy, but I came down to Florida the first weekend of January. I went to Orlando, and it was very hot and humid, and I got this sore throat here. And that sore throat turned into a virus. That virus turned into like a head cold. And I was literally sick for over a month. I couldn't kick that whatever I picked up. And then I got better. And then 2 weeks after I got better, I got hit again, almost exactly the same. And it's never happened to me before in my life like that. It was something I never experienced in a sickness, picking it up. And I went to the doctor, got blood tests and everything, and it came back, everything was perfect. No virus, no bacteria, no nothing. Nothing was off. So it was kind of like a mystery illness for myself. And I was just talking to a couple people today, and they had the exact same thing happen to them. And I'm wondering if anybody else who's listening had those type of symptoms, because it was very, very strange.
It's a great place to kick off this conversation tonight. Yes. And last night we had Richard Dolan on the show. And Richard and I and the Fadernauts, it's always a great UFO conversation, which we ultimately had last night. It was great. But I kicked off the conversation with coronavirus. And it seems that, let's go straight there.
Sure.
Coronavirus. Is this something? Is this a conspiracy? Is this something? Is this not? Is it unnatural? Is this a man-made thing that has escaped? Is it a weapon? Has it been weaponized? Is it any of that? Because it seems funky to me, the way that the media is reporting it. The numbers, the way that you're looking at the distribution of this virus, what countries are getting it, it feels a little weird to me. Do you think that there's something else to this than nature?
Well, I know that the coronavirus is natural, but it's mostly found in animals. And for us to pick it up, it needs to have some type of alteration to it, some type of cross-contamination. And it seems to have morphed into something that's very new, something that's very resistant. And the most interesting thing about this virus is that it could stay on surfaces for a long period of time. Most viruses, if it's on a surface, sometimes it takes an hour for that virus to be killed, depending on the surface. Sometimes it takes a day, but more than a couple days to have an active virus on a surface, that is also a very strange thing. I flew into Miami from Toronto, and everybody was, going into fear. There's no masks at the stores. And when I went into that airport, there was nobody wearing masks. It was almost like it didn't exist. So it was very strange in an international airport to see that. And there was no announcements. There was no anything about it. So there was no fear in that airport. But we live in an age where we experiment on viruses. We live in an age where we could create biological weapons and new viruses. This is the reality that we live in. And I do believe that in these type of scenarios, there is always human fault involved. And it may not be, it might be something very simple where, let's say someone is putting a virus back and it gets in their clothes, or they get contaminated, unaware that they're contaminated, and then go out into the public and it starts to spread like this.
Right.
So we live in an age where that is 100% a possibility. And I would think that, like we're talking about, strains of viruses like corona, like things are known about these things. Who knows what type of biological weapons, viruses, and bacteria they are actually working on today that we have no idea, that we have no resistance of, that if it does get out into the society, it could decimate our planet. And that is a very scary thought that is 100% a true reality that we live in today.
The other part of this where and we have to be very serious about this assessment, and I am. The media is portraying this one way and freaking everybody out. And in doing so, in the relentless coverage of it, now we've got airlines that, and airports around the country that are virtually empty now, where people don't want to travel on airplanes. And I understand why, because they're reading the reports that are coming in and out of the media. And then we have the cruise ship industry. We have that. We have the other elements that are about to come into play, not only with the airlines and transportation and goods, but the disruption of manufacturing that's going to eventually trickle down not only to the United States, but globally because of China, and the impacts on markets and the economy around the world, where I'm looking at this in 3, 4, 5 months, where the world economy, not just in the United States, but worldwide, is going to take a huge ding from this. And all of this perpetrated because of the way the media has been handling this. And the reason why I bring this up, and this is just logic, last year in 2019, where we had 45 million cases of flu in the United States, not worldwide, just in the United States, and we had 19,000 deaths. And what is the difference between that, and why isn't that being covered in the media, versus coronavirus, where I don't care about the ratio of death to infection. I'm talking about the general impact. That's the part that I don't understand, Jason. And I look at these two sets of numbers, and one is like a real concern, 19,000 deaths and 45 million people infected. And I look at these coronavirus numbers, and I'm just like, I don't see the big deal. So that's where I think the media has got to bear the brunt of responsibility here.
It is, and it is affecting the economy right now. And, if it continues like this, everything is going to be affected. But you have to also remember that death rates with flu, many people that are in the hospital today who are sick, who are elderly, who have preconditions like heart disease or strokes or anything of that nature, usually they don't die of those conditions. Usually they're in the hospital or they go home and they get the flu. And because they're already in a weakened state, they die of that flu. So the flu mostly kills those that are weak, that are at the end stages of life. So when they mark the death for the statistics, they don't say, oh, this person died of the heart disease or cancer. They died of the flu. So a lot of people go that way.
Right. And what to you, when you read that and absorb it, what's the difference? I mean, what would the difference be? What is the significance of who is being affected, how they are? It's nearly the same. It's the very young, it's the very old. If you're healthy and your immune system is solid, you may not even know, right, that you came in contact with the coronavirus of any version, because you're going to fight it off.
Yes, and I've been reading some reports, and I don't want to go into the fear of it, but a lot of these reports are saying that when someone goes through the coronavirus, it may actually damage the body, the lungs, long term, so that if you get it again, your chances of survival are much lower. So it is dangerous to think about. And when you're looking at the reports coming out of China, look at the first doctor who reported the coronavirus. He was a young man. It looked like he was in very good health, and he succumbed to it very quickly. So if you look at it like that, it's not just the elderly and the young and the sick. Someone that is healthy can actually succumb to that illness, which makes it a lot more dangerous than the common flu.
Now, what do you make of staying on the conspiracy side of this, where you have areas in the world like China, who we've got these issues with that have been going down in a geopolitical sense, and they get hit. Of course, Iran, who we've had some very, we're shooting at each other right now and almost broke out into a war a couple of months ago. They are one of the most infected countries, and right in the Middle East, a great distance from China. It doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, you have South Korea, and in the middle is North Korea. And we don't know what the reports are in North Korea because they clamp down on their news and their information going to the outside world. But you can only imagine how affected North Korea must be if South Korea is affected like they are. And I find that just a little strange. No proof of anything, but I'm just looking at the numbers.
Yeah, and if you have that kind of conspiracy mindedness to you, and you look back at history of what governments have done to other populations, what military has done with, let's say, Agent Orange and other radioactive substances being dumped in different cultures, they've done things like this before. So to say that they could never release a biological weapon as simple as a virus, you can't say that at all, because if you've looked at these freedom of information requests going back, and we'll talk about some of those tonight, you will see that the government has put forth plans to harm their own citizens, to start wars or to make changes. And it's 100% historically documented that governments will go to that level and hurt their own civilians for change or for some type of mission that they're on. So, to say it's just a virus, well, yeah, it could just be a virus, but we will never know until we know.
Yeah, the thought of, somebody, walking down the streets of Tehran with a vial of coronavirus and opening it up and walking away, that's about as creepy and as scary as it gets, but it just feels weird to me. That's all. And we'll never know, at least right now, and it would take a whistleblower of the extreme to come forward. And speaking of this, why is it that in the conspiracy circles, and I've been given the label of, the king of conspiracy, that I just jump into all of this. Well, underneath that umbrella, if you want to go with conspiracy, you have all of these different subjects that we like to cover on this show. And it could be UFOs, and it could be time travel or lost history or the educational system, the banking system. All of these things fall underneath that umbrella. But in the conspiracy world, when you have conspiracy theorists out there, you are all in or you are not, right? And that if you waver on one conspiracy, then they throw you off the bus because you're not a real conspiracy theorist. You either believe in everything from the flat earth to 9/11 and everything in between. And if you don't, then you're not a real conspiracy theorist. Why is it that way, Jason?
I would say we have extremists in all communities, and I believe that is a very extremist point of view because, as you know, Jimmy, I love conspiracy theories, and I love going down the rabbit hole, and I love historical conspiracy theories and how one conspiracy builds off another conspiracy. There is like a family tree of conspiracies that connect to each other. And it's fascinating to see where all this information comes from and how it came to be. And by researching multiple conspiracies, you'll start to see that some are not conspiracy theories. Some are historical facts that used to be conspiracy theories, but now documentation has come forward that it's 100% historical evidence that occurred. And then you go to the other extreme where you're researching these conspiracy theories and you're following that rabbit hole and you realize that it was just a myth or a story created for a very specific purpose. And because it was a popular idea and it sounded true and it related to true events, it was fuel and it went right to the top of the conspiracy world, even though it was not true to begin with. But many people in the conspiracy world take the fake stories and take the historical real stories, and they'll blend them together to create a narrative or a mythology of the conspiracy world. And if you don't believe in that conspiracy narrative or elements of that conspiracy narrative, then you don't believe in the entire conspiracy. And I think that's a very dangerous way of looking at it because I have researched this for years and years, and there are true conspiracies that we need to look at. And then there's conspiracies that sound pretty good, fit the description, makes the story better, but there's nothing really to back it up. And we have to kind of be mature about it and say, you know what, let's let go of these things that are speculation and stories, even though they help confirm the other conspiracies, and let's just focus on exactly what we know is true, because those are fascinating in themselves.
When we come back after the break, we're going to start things off with the Denver International Airport. And I know that you, excuse me, I know that you travel a lot. And in the 1990s, when I was flying all over the country every single week, I did this for years, and I found an easy travel solution for me. And instead of going all the way to LAX and getting a direct flight, I would go to Burbank because that would take me an hour to get to LAX, and it was just a drag in and out of the airport. Or I could just go to Burbank Airport, 5 minutes up the road, and connect through Denver International. I would rather connect through Denver International on United than take a direct flight because of the convenience of Burbank Airport. And I got to know Denver International Airport really, really well. Well, sometime in the 90s, I started to read these stories about Denver International Airport. And I went immediately to go and investigate. The next day, I was flying through DIA, and I started to see these things that were reported on. And there is the fun of the rabbit hole. There's the fun of the rabbit hole, and you never get confirmation. But when you go down the rabbit hole and then physically you look at something that has been reported and you're seeing it with your own eyes, you kind of freak out. And there is, and I always think of the movie Conspiracy Theory, right, with Mel Gibson when he loses his mind. Yeah. Well, you go and you see the murals on the wall at Denver International Airport, and you absorb those, and you look at the implications of what's in these murals, and you start to come unhinged a little bit. And then you start wondering what is underneath you, and that maybe this is true, and it only takes a piece of confirmation, right, that could cause some people to snap. Is that dangerous?
It is, because the best conspiracy theories are based off of true things that are observable. Mm-hmm. You know, so like you were talking about the mural. If someone tells you that this mural means a certain thing, and then you go and look at the mural and you can see the contents of it match what this conspiracy theory says, then you say to yourself, that conspiracy theory is real.
That's right. That's right. I went through that. Mm-hmm. I literally went through that. And I don't know. When we come back, we're going to go deep into the Denver International Airport. But I thought, and this is the truth, we're going to talk about it in just a minute. I thought that the murals were not real. That's what I thought. And I went, and when you actually go, because the analysis of what is in the murals is so extensive. And you just think to yourself, this can't be true. It can't be. And when you go and you see them for yourself, that's when you think, if this is real, then what else about this is actually true? It's a pretty amazing story. So we'll do all of that when we come back. This is Quittspiracy Part 2 with Jason Quitt. When we come back, it is the Denver International Airport. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's simple. You can follow Jason Quitt on Twitter. That's Jason_Quitt with 2 T's. He does it that way because there's a lot of other Jason Quitts out there that are imposters. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We have 2 events coming up. One in May, that's Contact in the Desert, May 29th through June 1st. Palm Springs, California, Indian Wells. You go to contactinthedesert.com and get your tickets and info there. And then June 26th and 27th, 2020, heading over to Manchester, United Kingdom, for the Awakening Conference. And it's very simple, awakeningufo.com. Our guest tonight, Jason Quitt. He's here for Quittspiracy Part 2. And Jason is back. He's in Miami, living the life. But prepping for the show this week, I wanted to do Denver International Airport first. And as we look into this, let's get an overview of what the conspiracy is about Denver International Airport.
Sure. Well, there's actually many conspiracies that involve Denver International Airport, but the biggest one is that there is a secret underground base built underneath the airport that is accessed through strategic tunnels. And these tunnels actually go for hundreds, if not thousands, of miles across the U.S. to other underground facilities. So this is the main conspiracy about the Denver International Airport. And then what else can we possibly say about these underground bases? Well, a lot of people say that they are alien bases, that they are hiding aliens in these underground bases, and it's all military bases.
The purpose of these tunnels would be what?
I would say and just by the way, I go to Denver all the time. And whenever I get an Uber driver or a taxi, the first thing that I ask them is, tell me about the conspiracies about the airport. And I've gotten so many different responses from just the average person that lives there. And these tunnels are, I would say, gateways to these bases. They have fast train systems that run across the country. And one of the best conspiracies I've heard that actually makes sense to me, and it could be completely possible, is that there is an underground network of these tunnels, train systems, and underground bases for the event of the end of the world. And that during a time of these cataclysms or war or destruction, the government of the United States will go to Denver Airport, go down into the tunnels, and can have a continuation of government and society underground in these facilities all across the nation until it is safe again to come back to the surface.
Now, the rumor that I had heard, and I want to move on to other aspects of this, but the rumor that I had heard in the very, very beginning was that there was no reason to build the airport where they did. It was way further out, away from Denver, in the middle of nowhere, and they could have built it much closer to Denver. The old airport was right there, right? And this new airport just takes forever to get to, and it is completely remote. That they had, this is in the beginning, and I was talking to my friends that lived in Denver at that time, that they were already building the networks of tunnels that were going to Denver International Airport, and then they built the airport on top of the existing tunnel system that was built in preparation of putting the airport in. And when you look around, when you get to Denver, you've been there many times, you can see that there is nothing around Denver International. You can't even see Denver from Denver International Airport, can you?
No, it's really out in the middle of nowhere. And there is so much land around this airport. And when you're driving out, you're in the middle of nowhere and you're still on the property of the airport. That's how much land the airport takes up. So the airport itself owns a huge plot of land that you'll be driving for, 10 plus minutes, and you're still in the airport, the land of the airport. So why does the airport need this much land? And, I've spoken to people in Denver who said that they actually worked on building and constructing the tunnels, and they said there's miles of tunnels under there. And if you even research mainstream media and try to look up the tunnels underneath it, they do actually say that there's over a mile of tunnels under the airport, and it's used to transport luggage and other things across the airport. Like, kind of makes sense, but it doesn't really make sense. And there's also this huge plot of land. And when I was driving through there, you're driving and you're seeing like mountains, literally like mountains of dirt and gravel just piled up on these properties. And you think to yourself, where is all this dirt coming from? Are they really building all these tunnels and these underground structures under the airport, under this land? and they're taking that soil and just putting it right on the property so that anybody driving by can see these large amounts of dirt and gravel all over that property.
Now let's start with these gargoyle sculptures that are throughout the airport, and they were done by an artist named Terry Allen. When you have all of these conspiracy theories tied into DIA, is it a good idea to start putting these demonic-looking gargoyle sculptures with they've horns, right? These demonic-looking gargoyles on pedestals inside of the airport.
I have to agree. That was a terrible idea on their part. But, as a conspiracy theorist that looks at things, especially if they're evil or dark, when you see a gargoyle, you automatically get that fear, like, what is going on here? And also the Masonic symbols that are all over the airport too. And a lot of people in conspiracy world equate Masonic symbolism with negative, and then you see all these gargoyles around. But in ancient times, gargoyles were something very positive for people. And they were placed on structures, specifically churches, where people would gather, holy places. They would put these gargoyles outside, facing the outside, to ward off evil, to ward off any bad intentions, to ward off any negativity. So the true purpose of gargoyles on buildings was to protect the building from outside forces, outside demonic energies, and to really protect the people that are inside. And most people forget that meaning, and we kind of lost that information. But I do have to say, it does look very strange in our modern era to continue with those old practices of warding off evil using the gargoyle.
And then we have the time capsule that was placed there by the Masons, by the Freemasons, with the Freemason symbol on it. It's dated March 19th, 1994. Okay, that in of itself is pretty tasty. It's pretty interesting to look at. But that's not what's most important. What is important here is underneath that date of March 19th, 94 are these words. It says New World Airport Commission.
Yeah.
And you can see it, and you can read it. It's clear. It's right there. New World Airport Commission. If there's nothing going on, right, this feeds the fire. And this is another piece of evidence for somebody that wants to say that there's a conspiracy here. There's something going on. And we have this. What do you make of that?
Again, an awful decision for whoever planned that. Because for those with a conspiracy mind, they know that one of the agendas is to move us into a new world order. So when you see those words in plain day with the Masonic symbols that say New World Airport, your conspiracy mind explodes. And there's also a time capsule there for 100 years to be opened in 100 years from that point. So there's this, what is in that time capsule? What secret is there? Is this the first New World Order airport, which is the center of the new U.S. United States? Is this the center of the post-apocalypse, the post-war world where civilization is going to center around this airport? So 100% the conspiracy mind goes crazy looking at that.
And then we advance to the murals. There are two. And one is clearly depicting war, machine guns, famine, skulls, death, zombies, an apocalypse. clearly represented there. The second mural, which has children that are in color, that looks like they survived, being guarded over a dude with a large sword and an AK-47 looking automatic weapon. What is this doing at the airport? And depicting war and peace or survival of the apocalypse?
When you look at it with that mindset, that is the only obvious thing that you're looking at.
Well, what do you mean by saying that? How else are you supposed? The paintings are what they are.
Exactly. So it's like when you hear the conspiracies, when you look at them, it depicts almost, I would say, it depicts the end of the world. It depicts a destruction of the planet. It shows death. It shows destruction. It shows the worst in mankind. And then the other side, it shows this kind of new world. Again, that saying, new world. And it shows that it's being protected and it's in harmony and there's beauty and everything, like something to look forward to after the destruction.
And there's no beauty in the picture, by the way. Okay, there is a blooming flower. There is a child in the picture, but the rest of the picture is corpses, a building that has been bombed out, right? It's a shell of a building standing there. And the thing that you see in this picture is the sword and the AK-47.
And I would have to say again, whoever is planning this is doing a terrible job of hiding things, because the mind can only see one story when they start to put all these pieces together.
The alien aspect of this, the ET aspect, and, are there underground bunkers and the tunnel system and everything? At the entrance to one of the tunnels, one of the, apparently an airport employee carved into the wall right there an image of an alien. And you look at this, and this isn't, can be seen by the average traveler that goes through DIA. But if you have access to the tunnel, you can go up and see this. Why would somebody carve? I'm just saying, of all the things you can carve into the wall, the perfect depiction of an alien gray with the almond-shaped eyes and the big head and the skinny body is right there carved into the wall.
Maybe the artist is messing with us because we know that there is a conspiracy around this. But again, and here's the again part, there are multiple stories around the United States and around the world of beings that would be described as grays, that they live underground, that they have societies under the earth through cave systems. They've been with us since our beginning, and many people believe that there is a secret war going on underground between the humans and the Greys, and there's some type of agreement or alliance going on underground, and that there's a whole other civilization that the people on the surface have no idea about. So when you start adding the stories of the Greys and the aliens and the tunnel systems, again, this is Conspiracy World 101. There are so many corroborating stories of entities described as Greys coming out of these cave systems, and it's been recorded in our history for a very long time. So is there a base that contains what we would consider alien life? It may not be alien life. These beings may be completely terrestrial, and we may have another civilization of species living on the planet that we are told are aliens, and we're told to fear them. But maybe there is some type of an agreement underground between these beings and humans.
The management at Denver International Airport thought that it would be fun because of the conspiracy theories that have been spread about DIA to have a conspiracy theories uncovered gallery at the Denver International Airport. And in one of the displays in this art gallery exhibit is a skull of an alien that was made by the employees, and it was planted during the construction of the airport hotel and their transportation center. Now they've got that skull that was made and planted back then during the construction is now on display in their Conspiracy Theories Uncovered gallery. Is this a way of, I mean, clearly there's a message here, but is this their way of deflecting from the reality and the truth of what's going on at DIA? Or is this just saying, look, there's nothing here and we're just having some fun?
Well, the truth is both myself and you don't know what's really going on there. And this is why it's such an amazing conspiracy. I think from a marketing perspective, the best thing to do is kind of go with it. You know what I mean? And they're putting up advertisements with aliens on it. They're advertising the conspiracies to bring actually attention to the airport in some type of marketing display. But then again, you hear about these societies, and they always tell you, hide the truth in plain sight, so that you are displaying the truth, even though the person that's not initiated into the truth will not understand the full depth of what they're experiencing, but subconsciously they pick up on that and understand that there is truth to what is going on and what they're experiencing in that place.
Now, what's the story behind the Blucifer horse?
This is a great story, and it is a huge stallion. It's a huge blue horse that's at the front of Denver Airport, and it's on its hind legs, like kind of jumping in the air. And it, you know, if you're just looking at it, it does look very sinister. You know, it has red glowing eyes, this blue horse. It looks very sinister, and it's given this name Blucifer, you know, like, you know, it's Lucifer the horse. And, you know, talking to some of the locals, they just say that's one of the horse of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Even though that's not advertised or talked about, that's what a lot of the locals just say. You know, that's one of the horses that brings the apocalypse. So that's a huge image just to have in front of an airport. But the story behind this horse is, you know, you can't write this stuff. The sculpture, the artist that made this, his name is Luis Jimenez. I hope I said that correctly.
Jimenez.
And I'm Canadian,
Yeah,
but,
it shows.
But, thanks. But as he was putting the sculpture together, a piece of it fell off and severed an artery on his body. And because he was very far away from a hospital, he succumbed to those injuries. The sculpture of that horse killed the artist that made it.
And now, is this a vetted true story?
Yes, this is 100% fact.
Okay. Now, see, that just adds to things, doesn't it?
Yes. And then because of that, the artist's children actually stepped in and helped finish the sculpture so that it could be delivered to Denver Airport. But because of the story that was behind it, because of the evil nature of what this horse looks like, there was like social media protests. There, you know, people did not want this type of sculpture to be placed anywhere near the airport. But obviously it's there today and everybody can see it. And there's, you know, all these myths that go on with this horse, the horse of the apocalypse. And they say it came alive. There's a lot of people that believe that this is a haunted horse that could come alive. And during the artist's creation, just like the golem, it gave him life. And this horse came alive and killed the artist. So this is the conspiracy of the artist's death, creating the golem horse of the apocalypse.
Oh, man. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. The poll just went up. So I've already voted. I'll tell you what my vote is in just a second. 1 pipe, 2 pipe, 3 pipes, 4. Is Denver International Airport an underground alien base built for the apocalypse, Jason? 1 pipe, 2 pipes, 3 pipes, 4.
You know what? After our talk, I think I've even changed my pipe rating, and I'm going to give this a 3 pipe rating.
So did I. I went 3 pipes. 3 pipes. 4 pipes all in. I'm not quite there. But there's enough compelling evidence. And look, for those out there, and we've got a lot of Fadernauts in Colorado, and unless you've been to Denver International Airport and checked it out for yourself, it's a tough thing. And if you haven't been there and you've read all of this evidence, you're probably going 4 pipes. I don't think anybody's going to go 1 pipe. There's just too many crazy things. You go and visit the airport. It doesn't have a sinister vibe to it. In fact, it's one of my favorite airports to go to.
It's very nice.
It's very nice.
Airport.
Very nice airport. The mall in the middle. Yeah. I did all of my shopping in that mall. I was traveling so much, I would look forward to going to that mall in the middle of the airport so I could buy clothes, so I could buy the latest of something. I bought shoes. I shopped at that mall every single week. I loved it. And the other thing about Denver International Airport, it's 0 degrees outside, but upstairs in the back, they had a smoking lounge. Sealed off from the rest of the airport. I don't know if they still have it there, but it was one of my favorite places to hang out. So I'm going with, because of my visits to the airport and what I know is actual evidence, I'm going 3 pipes, solid 3 pipes. Right now, let's see what the voting is right now. Man, we got 4 pipes in the lead.
Wow. And like I said, if you have that conspiracy mind and that kind of occult symbolism background, and you enter this airport, it's like a field day. You walk around and you're looking for these symbols and you find them.
They're everywhere. There's no question about it. Right now, and we got a lot of votes in. Right now, 6% with 1 pipe, 18% with 2 pipes, 30% with 3 pipes, 46%, Jason, 4 pipes all in.
Wow.
That is absolutely incredible. Everybody keep voting. And I have no issues if you're going to go all in on 4 pipes with Denver International Airport. There's too much weirdness. Just, and I'm serious, Jason, those murals alone.
Yeah.
It's what are they doing there with that message? The message is clear. It's the apocalypse. It's the end of the world. And there's something else about that, too. It felt like there was a zombie plague skeleton play thing that was going on there that it is right out of your darkest movie, your darkest id.
That soldier wearing the protective face mask.
Right. He's wearing a face mask. Demonic looking, man. Crazy. So there you go. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we got to do it. We're going to go straight there. We're going to do 9/11. 911 coming up next with Jason Quitt. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Quittspiracy Part 2 on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. How you doing? On the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. If you have missed a live show, right? You miss a live show, it's simple. Just subscribe to our podcast. We have almost 1,200 shows in the archives. All the apps that you need, it's all for just $2 per month. go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on that podcast banner, and, help support the show. $2 per month, and all of the apps that you need, everything updated every single night after the show. 1,200 shows in the archives, $2 per month. There you go. Go and get the podcast. That way, when you go to work in the morning, you can listen to Fade to Black. It'll always be waiting for you. Our guest tonight, Jason Quitt, Quittspiracy Part 2, Part 2. Now we come into 9/11. Oh, man. And I think it goes without saying that this is, if you're going to have a conspiracy and you want all of the elements to come into play, 9/11 is right there, isn't it, Jason?
This is the conspiracy of the conspiracies in the conspiracy world.
It is. It is. And let's see.
And this is the first, I would say for me personally, this was the first conspiracy theory that really did wake me up to conspiracy theories. So I was part of that generation. I think I was in 2001. I think it was my first year in college. And I was actually home. It was a day off. And I had the TV on in the morning. And I didn't see the first plane, but I had the TV on to see the second plane. And I'm telling you, that changed my life, watching that. It was the craziest moment of my life, experiencing that with everybody else, watching that whole tragedy unfold.
I've told the story many times, and if you've heard it before, okay, but I'll keep it short. I slept with the television on at that point in my life. And I was living alone, so I was home alone. And I remember dreaming about this small plane crashing in, because this is what they were reporting at that time, that a small plane had crashed into the top of the World Trade Center. And so I kind of woke up and I looked down between my feet, and I'm watching the TV, and I see the smoke on the top of the World Trade Center. And I'm watching, and I'm like, wow, okay, so that wasn't a dream. This is actually real. And I sat up, and just like everybody else in the country that was watching this at that point, I didn't take my eyes off of the TV for probably the next 24 hours. And that's just what all of us went through. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and nobody else could either. What ended up happening to me and everybody else over the next weeks and months and years as we looked into this, I couldn't escape it. One of the things that tipped me off very, very early on, and we're going to get to these specifics, but when they had said and reported on TV that they found the passport to one of the hitchhikers on the streets of New York, right? I was like,
hijackers. Not hitchhikers.
Yeah. What did I say? Hitchhikers?
Hitchhikers. Yes.
Same thing. Hijackers. I remember just sitting back going, well, that's a load of crap. That right there felt wrong to me. It just didn't add up. It just, and to this day, it's one of the things that sticks out there. Okay.
It's like, when I heard that too, and this is so funny, is I pictured a man in black, a guy in a suit with his hat on, just walking in the rubble and just opening his coat, shaking out a couple passports, and then walking the other direction. Like, it was so strange to hear that reporting.
Now, okay, so there are so many different twists to the 9/11 conspiracy theory. Some of them are pretty extreme, right? Tactical nuclear weapons and thermite, holographic planes. But we've got to go with the official story first. What is that?
The official story is that on September 11th, 2001, 4 planes were hijacked by 19 Islamic terrorists, and they were determined that they were associated with Al-Qaeda, who carried out a suicide mission against the United States, which was a very large terrorist attack on U.S. soil. And it involved two Boeing 767 planes, which hit both the Twin Towers. One was at 8:46 a.m. on the North Tower, and one was at 9:03 a.m. on the South Tower. And then at 9:45 a.m., you had American Airlines Flight 77, which flew into the side of the Pentagon. And they hit perfectly into the U.S. Department of Defense. That's where that airplane supposedly hit. And then shortly after that, at 10:10 a.m., you had another plane that went down in a field in Pennsylvania. And so that was a strange one. So you had 4 planes, and that was the official story. And almost immediately, it was linked to Al-Qaeda with its head leader who gave the commands, Osama bin Laden. And that all happened within a couple of days from the first plane hitting to the announcement of Osama bin Laden.
I'm going to unpack a couple of things here. And I'll give my overall assessment of and
I almost forgot. Okay, these 19 terrorists, supposed 19 terrorists, were in the U.S., already living here for about a year, and they attended flight school, commercial flight school, and the way that they took down these planes and took control of these planes is that they smuggled box cutters onto these planes. So those are very strange elements to that story already. But that's the official story.
What's funny? I have box cutters and small knives here in the studio. I'm always unpacking boxes, and not only that, but cables and things and stuff. And I'll hold one up to the camera. Here's a little tiny one. And every time I open this up, I think about the claims of 9/11 that a hitchhiker could take over an airplane with one of these. I don't know. Hitchhiker. I said it again.
Yeah.
Hijacker, hitchhiker. It's funny. You get that stuck in your brain and it's not going to leave. Okay. So now there was reports that started to surface, and one of them, which was confirmed, that everything in the United States, as we know, all flights were grounded. So if you were traveling across the United States, you got stuck, right? You had to rent a car and continue on your trip if you wanted to get home. And this happened with tens of thousands of people that were stranded because all flights were grounded. There was no flying of airplanes except for the Air Force in the United States, except the bin Laden family, which was allowed to board a private jet and leave the United States for Saudi Arabia. Now, you have to stop and ask yourself at that point, whether there's a conspiracy here or not, how did, so early on when they were trying to identify the hijackers, and nobody really knew much about Al-Qaeda at that point, apparently, but the bin Laden family knew what was going on and were able to get together, get on a private jet, and leave the country when nobody else could fly. That right there is something that needs to be focused on and discussed, because there's no reason, unless the United States government knew in advance what was going on and what the bin Laden family had to answer for.
And why were they here in the first place is another question.
It is. No, the reasons for it, for them to be allowed to fly when no other American citizens are allowed to fly. Everybody in this country is freaking out. and then you allow them to escape, as opposed to holding them in this country and finding out what they knew. Well, that information and whatever was in that plane was allowed to leave the country. And that includes luggage and paperwork and computers and anything else that would tie and have evidence in this terrorist attack was allowed to leave the country.
That's right. And if you dig deeper into Osama bin Laden and the family and even Al-Qaeda, and you go deeper into the history, you know that the CIA, and this is public information, trained and gave weapons, basically creating Al-Qaeda to fight the Russians. So there was already a connection to the CIA connected to Al-Qaeda before 9/11 and to the Osama bin Laden family.
Now, when we start to pick this apart, and I'm looking at the clock here, and I'm thinking about how important 9/11 is, and I don't know, we'll probably spend the rest of the show on this subject. This has been debated back and forth on so many shows, so many books, documentaries that have been made on this subject. But the more that we look back at this through time, it seems like there is something to this. I'm not sure which part of it is real. Right now, holographic planes is a bit of a stretch. Yeah. Tactical nuclear weapons is a bit of a stretch. But there's other parts of this that need to be addressed. And one of them is the jet fuel. And did you know, before we move on, that I believe it was a B-24. B-24 Mitchell crashed into the Empire State Building.
That's correct.
And nothing happened.
Yes, because these buildings were built with the knowledge that a plane may hit them, and that they have to build them structurally sound and strong enough to take the full impact, force, and weight and fire and still stand. So all these buildings were built with that specifically in mind.
Let me ask you this. Did you ever visit the World Trade Centers?
I visited the site in 2003. So after.
Okay, after. So you didn't do it before?
No.
Okay, I went there a few times, and I have to say, Rita and I went to the memorial a couple of years ago, but the first visit that I went to the World Trade Center, I remember walking up, and I was with a friend of mine. We were with a group of people, and I walked up, and it takes your breath away. The size and the strength of these buildings, you cannot believe how big they were. The footprint, the way that, and you walked into the lobby, and you just felt the power, the strength of this building, and it's beyond words. The ginormity of the two World Trade Centers. They were just an amazing piece of construction. And knowing what I know now, and just looking back, I can't imagine anything bringing those buildings down. It could have been jet fuel. It could have been what it is. It could have been hijackers flying in, and it weakened the thing, and the pressure of the upper floors pulverized everything below it and just brought it down. Yes, okay, I get that. I've been there. I can't see it happening. Also, back in, before we move on, here in Los Angeles, this was in the 80s, and if you lived in Los Angeles, you would remember this. There's a bank building down on Sunset Boulevard, the first interstate bank building, big. And there was a nightclub on the top floor. It was a jazz club, and I've been there many times. And it was great. It was a lot of fun. And a fire broke out there in the first interstate building, and it was a massive fire. Now, it wasn't caused by jet fuel or anything, but nothing happened to that building. I think the building is still there to this day. And the weight of anything coming down and the weakening of the structure and forcing the collapse of the upper floors and the pancaking of everything that was below it. I look back to the first interstate fire and think that didn't happen there. And any other high-rise fire that we can think of. There was one that happened in Milan. Right after that, in Italy, where a plane crashed into one of the towers there in downtown Milan. I think it was the same intention, right? I think the pilot flew into the building to bring that building down. Nothing happened.
Yeah, and I believe there was a gigantic building in the Emirates in Saudi Arabia, and that thing burned for days. The whole building burned for days, and nothing structurally happened to it.
So what do we make of the jet fuel is not hot enough to melt these beams?
Well, there's many engineers and scientists who came forward saying that the beams were meant to be very strong, that they wouldn't melt or bend or buckle under the heat of jet fuel, that it's just not possible, and that's why they use that type of structure in buildings. So right there you have to kind of scratch your head and think, well, if the official story is that the jet fuel could melt these things and bring it down, but the engineers say they don't use materials that will do that, then who is lying to you? And I'll just put it out there that, yes, I'm sure that in the right circumstances, if a plane hits the building, it can bring it down in the right circumstances. I'm very open to that possibility of happening. But it didn't happen to one building. It happened to two buildings.
It happened to three.
Hold on, wait a second.
Yeah, it happened to
three buildings, didn't it?
Yes. You can't what is it? Building 7.
Now, when I heard about building number 7, that changed the whole scope for me personally of this conspiracy of that these towers were taken down purposefully. And the reason being is very simple. It wasn't hit by a plane. Yet, on video, and you could watch the videos online right now, this building collapsed in 5.4 seconds.
Right.
From the top floor to the bottom floor. And when you watch that video, you can literally see detonations. You can see windows being blown out, perfectly aligned down the structure of the building, like a perfect demolition. And the building falls. When I saw that live, when I saw that afterwards, there is no question in my mind that something very odd is going on here that is not being explained or talked about. Because tell me, like, the truth is, when do they ever mention Building 7 in the news? They did when it happened, but never again. They never, ever mentioned the name Building 7. And the interesting thing about this is when I was doing some research tonight and I went into Google and I typed in World Trade Center building. When I typed that in, all the other buildings came up except Building 7.
I find that interesting. And when there's two other things, excuse me, that one is of course, the BBC correspondent that is on TV and announces the collapse of Building 7 before it happened. And that is very easy to see, and it is there, and that's a tough one to explain, and I don't buy any of the official explanations. We don't have time to get into that. But I want to back up for a second. The actor, Dan Fogler, who is a very funny guy, and his IMDb page is impeccable. He's funny and he's really cool, but he's also a conspiracy theorist. And he was a guest on this show. And we brought Dan on, and I asked Dan, I said, so what got you here, with us right now? And he goes, man, it's really easy to explain, Jimmy. He says, it was September 11th, 2001. because I was in my apartment in New York and I'm watching the tragedy unfold with everybody else. I can look out my window and see the World Trade Centers, right? They're on fire. And I'm watching that, and I walk back into my living room. I'm watching the news report on TV, and they announce on TV that building 1 has collapsed. And he said, "No, it hasn't. It's outside." And he walks out, and he looks, and the two World Trade Centers are still there. And he's like, "Now what is going on?" He said, "Jimmy, I walk back in, and I'm watching this on TV." And then I walk back outside, and I'm looking at the two buildings standing. Now, World Trade Center 1 did fall, and so did 2. And I watched that happen from my apartment. But when they announced it on TV, I was walking from my patio back in going, "What? I'm in crazy town here. I don't understand what is happening because I see it falling on TV, and I'm walking outside, and it's still standing." Now, I don't, I'm not doubting Dan Fogler for a second. I believe Dan Fogler. But what do we do with that when we're looking at everything else in this conspiracy? Putting the BBC component to the side, Dan Fogler is a witness to this that has gone public. And I think that is something that we need to really consider and take into account, don't we?
That is extremely strange, and I have no logical explanation of why that would be. But from seeing the BBC, and he's just seeing the news reports coming in almost immediately after the first plane hit, it was almost like everybody was stationed perfectly and had their scripts ready to go at that moment.
And when we look at this in its totality, we're up against a break here, and we're going to come back and continue our 9/11 discussion. But what are we actually dealing with? Are we dealing with our government involved in killing 3,000 American citizens on our soil? Or was it hijackers that the government was involved with? Right? Did we bring the buildings down, or did the hijackers bring the buildings down?
In my personal opinion, after all these things, and there's a lot more to talk about after the break, obviously, I'm starting to lean more and more to the government or some agency involved in perpetuating this entire setup.
Yeah, we've got a lot of votes already here. We'll get to yours in a second. But our poll, which is, I believe, the 9/11 official story, right? And right now it's 75% one pipe. It holds no water. 8% at 2 pipes. Plausible. 3 pipes likely. 9% 4 pipes that it is true. And I can understand, excuse me, I'm not hitting my cough button. So I want everybody to vote in this, and we'll announce the results of all of the polls at the end of the show tonight. And our guest is Jason Quitt. This is Quittspiracy Part 2. Right now we're discussing 9/11. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back after this short break, continuing with Jason Quitt. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jason Quitt, Quittspiracy Part 2. Right now we're discussing 9/11, and there's so much to unpack with 9/11, and there is so much information and so many experts that have come forward. There's so much testimony, and you combine all of that with the stuff that we have witnessed personally on this. It's something that is just huge. It is a huge conspiracy. And one of the aspects of this that I want to talk about, and haven't even gotten to the Pentagon yet, but is the use of tactical nuclear weapons. small suitcase type weapons that were used and brought in to bring down the towers. Now, as extreme as that is, this is something that is seriously considered in the conspiracy theory community, isn't it, Jason?
It is, because it would take that type of heat or technology to have the effect of what has been witnessed, which is basically the buildings turning to dust, the beams being like dissolved. That does not just happen with jet fuel. There has to be some type of other element involved at extreme heats beyond jet fuel to create that type of effect.
And the wouldn't there be some type of radiation and residue left over from that would clearly leave a fingerprint at the site? It's hard for me to go down the nuclear road.
It would absolutely leave a fingerprint. Absolutely. And this is why I think it wasn't that type of a weapon. But it's still a mystery. And this is the conspiracy about it, is that it just doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up to what we are witnessing, what the experts are saying, and to what the story actually is. None of it adds up. And, we're talking about extreme heat. We're talking about the buildings turning to dust, falling into its own footprint. The black boxes of those planes were never recovered from those wreckages in the Twin Towers.
But wouldn't we hear a nuclear detonation?
Absolutely. It would be quite a bang. And there have been multiple reports of people that were in the buildings, especially in the lower levels, in the parking garages, that ran out of those buildings screaming that bombs are going off in the underground garages and in the lobbies. People witnessed explosions in those towers, and many of those witnesses were even captured by news as it was happening, talking about the explosions that they've witnessed in the towers on the lower levels.
And then we have there's so many different versions of this. And one of them is that they had teams of engineers that were in the buildings in advance there to repair elevators and to do upgrades, but they were actually there to make these vertical cuts in the I-beams and install thermite to level the building like you do when you do a commercial demolition. And wouldn't there be evidence of that, or is there evidence of it?
There would be evidence of thermite. There would be, and early reporting actually confirmed that, but it never really got into the mainstream, obviously, because they do say that in this type of fire with all the type of elements, natural thermite elements, which is iron oxide, can be found in these scenes. So it's like conclusive and non-conclusive at the same time. It's a perfect type of cutting material that could be hidden, even though it does leave traces. But I know you've heard the word or heard of the person, Dr. Judy Wood.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching her presentation on 9/11, and she showed a picture of one of these beams. And the beam looked like you were saying, the vertical cut going down it. And the only way that could happen is if it was somehow cut by thermite or some other type of force to allow the structure to fold on itself.
I had read that the cuts that Judy Wood, I'm not discounting her conclusions.
Yes.
But I had read the responses to that, and one of them was that those cuts that she has shown, and they're very famously out there on the internet, that these cuts were made all over the debris after the building came down so they could remove the debris, and that's why the cuts were there. But they were done after the collapse of the building.
And that can be. I don't discount that either. Hopefully we get to the truth on that. But there is one thing that Judy presented that completely blew my mind. I've never seen before. And it's on the internet. People can find this. There was news reports, and they're showing the metal structure in the background of the towers, the debris. And you see a solid metal, let's say support beam, whatever that was. And it's perfectly solid. And then it looks like the wind blows and the top of that thing just turns to dust. And this is live on TV, showing this metal just turning to dust in the wind.
Huh.
I'm sure someone on Twitter will post that. But when I saw that, it's like, that does not make any sense in my mind to any technology or fire or chemical that I know of that can do that to metal. And another thing that Judy was presenting was pictures of the steel beams, and many of them were like twisted like a shoelace. Like, it wasn't just, bent over to the side. It was like literally twisted like a Twizzler, like a candy. And that shouldn't happen. That doesn't make any sense at all to my mind trying to look into that. So you have these very strange anomalies when it comes to the physical steel, the metal of these buildings changing shape, dissolving. And then, if you look at the Hutchinson effect with experiments with different frequencies, energy technology, they could actually duplicate what we're actually seeing. And I'm not saying that's it. I'm saying that there is evidence that electromagnetic frequencies can change metal in what we've witnessed in the 9/11 attacks.
Now, let's discuss another aspect of this.
Yes.
Which, for me, okay. The holographic plane, unedited, edited video that was broadcast out over television, and that this is clear evidence of these planes not being real. Now, you look at the video, it's the power of suggestion. Somebody is telling you that this plane is flying behind the building when it's actually not, and this is now... They forgot to correct this part of the CGI when they were whatever these excuses are, right? But once that pollution is there for your eyes, now you're going to see something different. So I went and I looked at the video and I went, okay, let me analyze this. And I went and looked at historical records, original maps of New York City. I went and looked at black and white photos from the 30s, 40s, 50s, color photos. I looked at aerial photography, and there's a lot of, Manhattan's like the most photographed place on earth, right? Mm-hmm. So I went in and looked at all of the buildings. The building that looks like it is in front of the plane, right? And that the plane should, and you realize that building is not in front of the World Trade Center, that it's actually off to the left in the video and behind the World Trade Center. And it's an optical illusion in the video. So when I saw this play out, I was a bit disappointed. And that if you are going to put a video like this together, you're going to do the narration, you're going to do the slowdown, you're going to make all of this as an effective presentation as you can, without doing the research that I did. Right? Yes. Very simple research, going back and looking in. But this video was done for clicks and for sensationalism and for distributing something that clearly wasn't true. So I was disappointed in that. That being said, Jason,
Yes.
I think the bigger conspiracy here is not holographic planes or tactical nuclear weapons or thermite or cut beams or any of these other things that have been put out there, which may be true. But putting all of that aside, the bigger conspiracy, the real conspiracy, is that our government knew about this attack before it happened and allowed it to happen. That is a real conspiracy. That is a conspiracy by definition. By definition, right there. And that is the angle that is not discussed. Everybody wants to go into the sensational side of things, holographic planes. I've looked at different pictures of the planes where these planes were loaded with bombs and you could see underneath, and it was not the aircraft that was. And all of that is a bit tough for me to go into. But what isn't tough is the clear understanding that our government knew that those attacks were going to happen on American soil on that day in advance and did nothing to stop it. That is the tragedy of 9/11.
And weren't they running the exact same test and scenario on that very day?
Well, okay, if we look at it that way, where you have Larry Silverstein, the owner of the leasing company and stuff with the World Trade Center complex, taking out the insurance policy, and that it just feels weird. It feels weird to me that he knew, the government knew. I think people knew in advance and they allowed the attacks to happen. Why? Was it Donald Rumsfeld and the missing, 21 or $15 trillion or whatever it was? All of that got forgotten. The amount of financial records, gold and things and historical items that were stored away in the World Trade Centers, because they were so safe. All of that gone. All of the historical documents and records and bookkeeping. They were the financial centers of the known world, which crumbled into dust. Was all of this in play here? I don't know, but it feels that way to me.
It's absolutely suspicious that just 2 months before the towers came down, Larry Silverstein took out a new insurance policy that covered specifically what went down. And when that happened, he actually had to sue the insurance companies, and he won.
He did. That was my question. Did he get his insurance settlement?
$4.6 billion.
No kidding.
Yes. So he received $4.6 billion from insurance because of what happened on 9/11. Now, you know how I keep saying conspiracies always spin other conspiracies? There's a whole line connected to each other. Well, this whole missing $21 trillion is this element of 9/11 that some people discuss. But I really think that this is a very important point of the entire 9/11 setup, if it is a setup, is that there was a press conference. Donald Rumsfeld got up. He said that there was an accounting at the Pentagon, and they have found that approximately $21 trillion is completely missing and unaccounted for from the Pentagon. And this is massive, massive news. And the day after, the story is gone, and the conspiracy spins that all the records, all the people, everything that was involved with documenting this missing 21 trillion is destroyed in 9/11. So there can not be an investigation into this.
Now, wasn't it that the records for the missing trillions were not in 1 or building 2, but those were actually in building 7. And that being separate to the, obviously the Twin Towers, the way that building 7 collapsed, and I remember when I saw that on TV, I went, that doesn't make any sense. But there is the famous recording of pull it.
Yeah. I mean, what do you need more evidence?
It's just strange to me, and it's so hard because I believe in this country. I love the United States. I do. I love this country, man. I love living here. I love being an American. And then I'm forced into thinking these thoughts. It's mind-boggling. But before we go there, and I ask people all the time, before you go down the conspiracy road, and you think to yourself, would our government ever do something like this? I bring it up every time. Operation Northwoods. And this is the thing. If you would wonder or contemplate the sick minds that would have to put this kind of plan into action, write it down on a piece of paper, right? Discuss it with people around a table, right? And figure out the best way to pull it off and the reasons why. That is some sick stuff. But then you have Operation Northwoods, right? Which is virtually 9/11, and it was a plan that was not only detailed and written out, but it was approved by the Joint Chiefs and taken to President Kennedy. This is stuff you can't make up, and anybody can go look up Operations Northwoods. You can look at the paperwork. You can look at all the players involved, why they were going to do it. And if you don't think that mirrors nearly in lockstep the ideas behind a 9/11 type of action against American citizens for a false flag to go into war, I can't give you anything better.
Yeah, and this is also recorded history, and there's a lot of things written about this. But basically, they were preparing to commit terrorist attacks on U.S. military infrastructure, civilian targets, and they were going to turn around and blame it on Cuba. And that would be their justification to enter into a war with Cuba. And it went all the way up the ladder. It was all approved. It was ready to go. And President John F. Kennedy said, no, we're not doing this. And this put a wedge, actually. This is historically documented that this put a real wedge between President John F. Kennedy and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And it wasn't over for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They wanted to assassinate Fidel Castro, too. So they put together other projects. And exactly the same thing. They were writing up proposals for hijacking planes, shooting down planes, blowing up U.S. ships, orchestrating terrorism in the United States cities, killing civilians. This was all written up and approved. And it went back to President John F. Kennedy. And what did he do? He said, no, we are not doing this. So it was John F. Kennedy against the entire military who was really struggling to go forward to get them into a war with Cuba. So false flags in the nation of the U.S. is recorded history. And I would say, thank God, President John F. Kennedy was there at that time because he stopped war. He stopped innocent people from being killed. And at the cost, I believe, of his connection with the military structure, the military industrial complex. And, we all know what happened shortly after.
Well, and this is the thing. The blueprint of Operation Northwoods, which is some of the examples were to shoot down a commercial airliner with American citizens on it and blame it on Cuba. You know, kill everybody on the plane, but at least that would be a country would be behind us on that, and we could just go in and invade Cuba, and we wouldn't have any backlash from it because Cuba shot down an American plane, and that's the way we're going to make it look. Well, at the time of and as crazy as that sounds, that idea, that germ of an idea that was Operation Northwoods is something that is always in play with the military establishment and how to create a false flag so we could do something like this with an operation. Well, Desert Storm was left unfinished. And not only was Saddam still in power, but it was unfinished, and they wanted to go back in and get Saddam out and take over Iraq and its oil and finish that. And that involves the rebuilding of infrastructure and all the American companies that are going to be involved, the profits that are there, the stock market that is involved. All of this is in play. Well, how do we do that? How do we re-invade Iraq? Well, bring in Operation Northwoods. How can we bring this into play and have an attack on American soil so we can turn around and blame all of the Middle East for this, and then we can go in and finish what we started in the early 90s. And before you think that that's a leap, that's exactly what Operation Northwoods and an idea like that and a false flag operation presents. And as dark as it is, the ideas and the methodology of Washington, D.C. is always in play with something like Operation Northwoods.
Yep. And it's also the fear. You know, they attacked us here, we have to attack them there, and they have weapons of mass destruction, which were never found. And it was, you know, the whole country, I would even say the whole world, was in trauma, was in shock, was reactive. And when you're in that state, it's very easy to manipulate even things that are so obviously a fraud.
I remember going around and speaking with friends. Obviously, everybody was talking about this and what was going on around the country. And I don't think I didn't talk to anybody that didn't say, you know what? Let's just nuke them. Right?
That's right. I remember that.
I mean, it was that conversation was everywhere. Let's just end this right now. Let's just nuke them. Let's just nuke them. And that was the sentiment around the United States. So invading Iraq or Afghanistan and you know, a lynching was going to happen. The lynch mob was out, and somebody was going to be found responsible for this. And that's ultimately exactly what happened. And we're still there to this day.
Yes. Yeah, everything that a false flag would do, the purpose of a false flag, was played out in 9/11. We did go to war under false pretenses of weapons of mass destruction. You know, we did everything that we would have done in a false flag event. So when you put all these pieces together, for me and for many others, this was the wake-up call that maybe the government is not on our side for many things. And that is a day, 9/11 is where once we learned about these conspiracies and things didn't make sense, that's where I lost faith in the government as a protecting force for the people.
Now, and do you think, before we head to the bottom of the hour, when we come back, I want to stay on this because we got to talk about the Pentagon, but do you think if there was thermite and there were cut beams and tactical nuclear weapons and government involvement in all of this, do you think that there will be confessions and whistleblowers and deathbed confessions to come out? Because this would have to involve hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and keeping everybody silent is impossible, I would think. Do you think there will be some confessions?
I really hope so. And, history has shown us that many things that we believed were conspiracies 40, 50, 60 years in the future, through the Freedom of Information Act and through other sources, we've actually received documents showing that what we believed was a conspiracy was actually true. So maybe in our future, some type of document, something will be leaked or released that will actually solidify that maybe this was a purposeful attack that was a false flag done by the military or another group within the government.
So our poll right now is 78% one pipe. The official story holds no water. And we've got, it's very low, 6%, 7%, 9% for the rest of it. But right now, holding strong at 78% in our poll. If you want to vote in the poll, head over to Twitter, hashtag F2B. The poll is right there, and you can also see it in Rita's Twitter feed, too, as well. With that, let's take a break. When we come back, there's other things that I want to discuss tonight and different conspiracies, but I got to discuss the Pentagon. What went down there? This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Jason Quitt, Quittspiracy Part 2. You can follow Jason on Twitter at Jason_Quitt with 2 T's. You can follow me on Twitter, too, at JChurchRadio. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What a great night tonight with Jason Quitt. These subjects, when we talk about conspiracies, it's one thing to discuss conspiracy theory, but I haven't spent an entire show on things like DIA or 9/11. I have never done that on Fade to Black. And I think it's important not only for all of us to go back and revisit, but for me to get these thoughts out too as well. And I haven't discussed it, Jason, like this in depth on the show ever. And I have had question marks on all of this stuff. And there's enough laying out there just in Manhattan with the World Trade Center complex, but going down to Washington, D.C. and the Pentagon, I actually feel a lot more strange. There are elements to this that just don't make any sense. I'm going to start with this before we get into what happened at the Pentagon, is that there must have been hundreds of videos of what happened at the Pentagon. And I'm talking about the approach of the plane, security camera footage, gas stations, liquor stores, whatever, office complexes. There's all kinds of government buildings. There must have been just hundreds of videos of what happened there. Nothing has been brought into the public. I question that right there. I can stop right there and go, look, if the Pentagon is what it is, then release the footage, because somehow they went around and collected all of it. There must be tons of video footage of this, and none of it is out there in the public.
It was all confiscated. They went around immediately to every camera, every store, anything that would have shown a plane hitting the Pentagon. It was confiscated immediately. And none of it has ever been released to the public. There is one video, and I don't know exactly how this was shot. It might be on a light post, but you can see this on the internet of something hitting the Pentagon. We don't actually know exactly what it is, but if you're looking at it, this video that's out there on the internet, It does not look like a plane at all. Have you seen that video?
Well, the only video I have ever seen is the official security cam footage that was released by the Pentagon. And that is about as inconclusive as anything that you can see. It doesn't show anything. It's a blur.
That's right.
But are you saying this is another piece of footage in addition to?
No, that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
And you just see kind of like you see this kind of blip of light. It's not a very big blip. It's just a blip of light and then this explosion coming out of the side of the building.
And the amount of traffic and people that were driving around Washington, D.C. during this, where's all the eyewitnesses to say exactly what happened?
Exactly.
I have, as of yet, the other to see anything. The other part is the original news teams that were there, and you go and you look at that footage and you listen to the eyewitness testimony of the journalists that were there. They didn't see any evidence of an airplane, right? And it's like,
but you could see the footage. Like, you could still see this footage online, and there is no engines of planes. There's no debris scattered all over the place. There are the thing that really gets me, and I don't think many people talk about this, is there's these poles all over this property.
That's right. Nothing knocked down.
Nothing is knocked down in those original footages. And there's just this small little, it looked like a pencil hole, just a little hole in the side of the Pentagon.
Now, I've had a couple of people on this show that were in the building and call themselves whistleblowers, and putting that stuff aside, the footage that I saw of the news teams that were there, and you look around, nobody pointed it out, but you can see there, if that plane came in that low without hitting the ground or scraping the ground, that is pretty impressive flying, number one. But number two, there were no cars or buses that were hit. Forget about the poles, and the poles are all standing. Later, I'd have to go back and look at this footage, but later I remember, I don't know if it was released from the government, that showed these poles on the ground. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I just saw, it's like, did they go back and knock these poles down? Did they go back and deliberately knock this down and then shoot video of it to say, hey, no, these poles did fall, but in the original news camera, I'm talking about the news teams that were there in Washington, D.C. that were immediately on the scene. Those poles in that parking lot directly in front of the Pentagon were upright.
Yes. And I've seen some 3D animations of the flight path of how this plane would have had to have flown to hit that spot in the Pentagon. And it comes over a highway area, and then it's only a couple feet off the ground. It's only a couple feet off the ground. You'd have to be the most incredible pilot to pull that off. And even the speed and the amount of wind generated, if there was cars on that road, you don't think they're going to feel that? You don't think they're going to see a plane nearly rip the roof off the top of their car? That's how low this plane was. So even that doesn't make any sense. And
there's another part to this that I have thought of over and over again. The Pentagon, that happened at what? That was like 45 minutes after the first plane hit the tower, right? Or was it an hour and a half?
It was an hour, almost an hour after the first tower hit.
Right.
It was hit, so 9:45 a.m.
9:45 a.m. The first one hit at like 8 a.m.
Yes.
Right? I'm trying to get back. Okay, yeah, 8:46 a.m. the first plane hit, 9:03 a.m. the second plane hit, and then 9:45 a.m. the Pentagon got hit. But at that point, if everything is on the up and up, I'm talking about the government's version of this tragedy, wouldn't there be every scrambled Air National Guard, F-15 and F-16 in every state up in the air and looking at all planes that were still flying, including one that is flying towards Washington, D.C.? How would they allow that? How would they allow that into the airspace?
Well, there's no fly zones too around these areas. So they would have scrambled jets immediately to get this thing out of the air. Immediately. But according to, I'm trying to remember who this was, but according to, I think this is, I'm just trying to remember who said this, but basically these planes were ordered not to be shot down, not to be scrambled.
Now, what do we do with if we take all of this into account? What about the people that did die? And I'm talking about the Pentagon specifically. Mm-hmm. What do we do with that element? If a missile was fired into the Pentagon, which is the leading conspiracy theory on all of this, that a missile hit, cruise missile hit, that would explain nobody really seeing anything, nobody seeing an airplane. It's a cruise missile and it's coming through fast, slow, but you may not see it, as opposed to a giant, airliner. But then we have the aspect of all of the people that have death certificates that were allegedly on the planes, right? How do we reconcile that part of it and pull off a conspiracy like this?
I would say that is the most difficult thing because these people are people. They have families, they have lives, they have connections into the real world, and they did die on that date. So if it was a missile, then where is this plane? Where are those people? And that is a horrible thing to think about. So I don't really like going down that road of that conspiracy. Many people do. But if we conclude, or if experts conclude that there was no plane, then where did that plane and those people go?
That's right.
And yes.
And just like anything else, when we talk about tragedies like this, and certainly Sandy Hook comes to mind. But when people have died, I don't, not only because I'm a dad, and I have a lot of compassion, part of being a dad, but I have compassion for humanity and for human life, right? I just do. I don't like going down the conspiracy road when people have lost family members, and I don't want to be the conspiracy theorist dude out there that is talking about this stuff when somebody has lost a family member or many family members in something like this. And that goes back to like a situation like Sandy Hook, where I don't want to go down that road and be that guy. And separate from Sandy Hook, as somebody that looks into conspiracy theory, and I look into 9/11, I have some situations here that I am perplexed about. I'm truly perplexed, and I don't have the answers that I am given don't fit what I know and what I see. And I honestly feel that the government has not been straight with us about 9/11 from the word go. And that's just it. I know that there are people out there and people that I know that just say, hey, man, it was hijackers. They flew the planes in. The buildings collapsed. That's what happened. That's the end of it. There isn't anything else to this story. Okay? And that's fine. And the more that we discuss conspiracy theory, Jason, those people that believe that what they believe, their beliefs are strengthened. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're strengthened. And they are also strengthened on the conspiracy theory side. The more that you try to convince somebody that it was just hijackers and airplanes, the more that the conspiracy theorists are solidified in their beliefs and their research. You're not going to get anybody to cross over here. You're not.
And we don't know what the future is going to hold. Like we discussed, there might be new evidence that comes forward that changes things. And we also have to be flexible in accepting new evidence into play and applying it to what we know on both sides.
Now, let's switch gears for a second, and I want to talk about MK Ultra as we close out the show. And the reason why MK Ultra is such a compelling. Hold on, we got to do the pipes. 9/11.
Oh, and also just the last plane that fell into the field.
Oh, Shanksville.
Yeah, that was very mysterious as well because it did not look like a plane crash there. It looked like a hole in the ground with very little debris. So that's another quick mystery that people can go down.
Oh, man. Shanksville, again, people died.
Yeah, people did die.
People died, and I feel strange about the whole thing. But you look at that field, and how could an airliner just disappear? Plenty of airplane crashes and tragedies happen every year, and we look at the debris fields and the collection of evidence, and the FAA goes in with their investigators, and they reassemble these planes in an airplane hangar. Plenty of debris. Shanksville, there was nothing left. Nothing. There was nothing in that field. Still feel weird about that. For the families that lost people in that, I'm sorry for discussing this in such a callous way, but there just was nothing left. And I don't know. I don't follow the official narrative. But what's the alternative? That's the thing. You know, what's the alternative? Even worse. Yeah, what's the alternative here? Where did the plane really go? Did it really crash in the field? We don't know. No video, no eyewitness testimony. There's nothing there with that. And then there's the other part that we shot the plane down, that we had F-16s flying next to it. There's that part of the story. It's just, oh man, just a tragedy. It's
just tragedy. Literally, the story of 9/11 is just the story of tragedy. And it's an awful thing that we had happen in our history.
So where are you at with 9/11 overall? 1 pipe, 2 pipe, 3 pipes, 4?
I would say I would give this, a 3.5 pipe, that this is something very, very mysterious and one of the greatest conspiracies of our time.
Yep, I'm right with you. I might have to go 4 pipes. I think that the evidence is overwhelming, that it is completely funky. From every angle that you approach it, there are too many cogs in this machine, and it's I could go 4 pipes and feel pretty good. I can go 4 pipes. Huge conspiracy. Now, MK Ultra. Before we run out of time, what's interesting about MK Ultra is the senator that was involved with this, Senator Frank Church. So the question of would our government implement experiments on our own citizens for the purpose of manipulation and mind control? Right? Now, you would have to say they would never do that. Right? Of course not. They love us. Right?
Well, that's exactly what you would think, especially post World War II, with all the things that have happened in the world. You would think that governments would change and not hurt their citizens.
Yeah, Rita just hold on for a second. I turned it around. She goes, dude, it's one pipe if you don't buy the official story. Yeah, I know what the original poll was. My question to Jason was, is this a full-blown conspiracy? Not do we are buying the official story. So
yes.
that's what I asked Jason. So Jason's saying 3.5 pipes full-on conspiracy. I'm saying 4 pipes full conspiracy. And so Rita, yeah, we understand. And now Rita's going to text me at this moment, dude. Quit reading my text over the air. I'm watching her. She's typing. Oh, maybe she's going to stop. Okay, let's get back to MK Ultra. So it is revealed that there is a program being implemented by the CIA across the United States, and it is called MK Ultra. And Rita just says, quit throwing pipes around. Pipes are sacred.
But
she's right. Remember, she's right. Pipes are sacred, and we just can't abuse the pipe narrative like this in such a careless way without respecting the pipe. So yes, we respect the pipe, Rita. Is that once it was revealed in Washington, D.C. with the Senate, the CIA ordered all paperwork to be shredded and destroyed across the country with anything that had to do with MK Ultra. This is part of the historical record, isn't it, Jason?
It is. So much was destroyed with this that we are just kind of putting the pieces together with the documentation that has been found.
It was like 200 pages out of millions of documents. I think that's what the number is. Somebody can correct me. But there were 200 surviving pages that were pretty damning.
Yes. And remember, this was a conspiracy theory. Okay, so this was a conspiracy for a long time, and then it came out to be 100% fact. So MK Ultra is not a conspiracy at all. It was a conspiracy. So this is an odd time where we actually get the truth. The issue here is that this program ran officially for 20 years. And that's just incredible to think of, that the CIA tested on civilians inside the United States and outside of the United States, willing and unwilling. And they had over 150 different programs running, and all different types of mind control techniques. Many of it was with drugs, with LSD, hallucinogenics. A lot of it was with hypnosis, electroshock, abuse, and honestly, straight up torture. The worst of the worst of the worst. They used these things on normal people to try to figure out if they can control their minds, if they can program them, if they can make Manchurian candidates, if they can get them to kill for them, and just to see what would happen to a person's mind if they go through this type of procedure.
Yes, and the TV series that about MK Ultra with Ted Kaczynski.
Yes.
And you go and watch that. Just go and watch that. And you're left wondering, because of the way it's laid out. I'm looking at the clock. So yes. There's that part. There's the Unabomber. But I'm going to go back and even throw this into play. And that is Sirhan, who shot Robert Kennedy here in Los Angeles. And one of the things that Sirhan said was, he's like, man, everything was cool. And the next thing you know, I want to kill Robert Kennedy, and there's a voice in my head, and I'm pulling the trigger. It was, and was that MK Ultra? Was that MK Ultra in play, right? The Manchurian candidate.
That was literally laid out black and white in released documents of MK Ultra that is exactly what they wanted to do to their patients, to these people that they mind control. To literally, and it was called Operation Artichoke, Operation Bluebird. They wanted to literally create a killing machine that would just go ahead and do it, even at risk of death themselves. And it's almost like they're in a trance. They get triggered into this state of mind where they can go kill somebody and come out of it, and they don't understand what they just did.
Now, Whitey Bulger,
Yes.
who we all know, we don't need to spend time on that, and we're running out of time. We've only got about a minute and a half left. But was Whitey part of the MK Ultra program? There were reports that he was.
Yes, he was. He signed up for a university, and most of the MK Ultra studies were done through universities.
That's right.
So, and it was done in hospitals, universities, and prisons. So Whitey was approached by a university saying that he would get time off, and this was in the 50s, the late 50s.
Right.
And basically, they gave him tons of LSD. They tortured him. They tried mind control techniques. They threw him in isolation. They did everything to this guy, right? And by the time he was released, I think he was released in 1965. By the time he was released, this guy was so broken in his mind that he literally thought he was schizophrenic. He had voices in his head. He couldn't sleep. He had nightmares. He had all these thoughts about killing and all this crazy stuff. And he became one of the most ruthless mob bosses.
And FBI informant.
Yes.
You know, at the same time. So
Yeah.
you're left asking yourself, was Whitey the creation of the CIA and MK Ultra? And you're just left, and just like Ted Kaczynski, right?
Yeah.
And Sirhan, and the connections to MK Ultra with all three are pretty self-evident. I think they're right there in front of us.
Yeah, and Kaczynski, that was in Harvard of all places.
That was
Think
in
about
Harvard,
that.
and everybody around him. And you look at the evidence about Ted being part of the MK Ultra program. I think it's right there. I think it's you would win in court.
Yes, there's no doubt. There is no doubt in my mind that the CIA, through these mind control things, literally broke Ted Kaczynski and created the Unabomber.
Okay,
there's no doubt in my mind.
Let's see what. Here we go. MK Ultra is real. Well, I'm going 4 pipes. There is the poll, and 91% right now. 4 pipes. I'm assuming you're going 4 pipes all.
Oh
in.
yes, 4 pipes. And this is another case that we can say was a conspiracy, turned out to be 100% factual. And there's still repercussions in our world that this has screwed up so many lives, so many people, that it rippled out past the people that were involved to the families and even innocent people.
Well, there you go. I got the poll up, and it is now out there. You can go and vote now. We're going to run over here by about 30 seconds, but I want to thank you, Jason, so much for going poll to poll with us tonight. Absolutely amazing. We've got 9/11 official story. 75% say the official story holds no water. Let me get to the first poll tonight, which is Denver International Airport. Is it a secret underground base? And 49% 4 pipes. Yes, there is a secret underground base. So there you go. Thank you so much, Jason. Behave and be well. Enjoy your time down in Florida. We're packing up the car and heading to Las Vegas as soon as I hit goodbye. Enjoy yourself. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you so much.
I've got to get out of here. I'm rolling credits now, and I'm going to get all of this in before we are disconnected from the network. I want to thank everybody tonight on Twitter, YouTube, KGRA, Facebook, all of our networks out there, TalkStream Live. Fade to Black's executive producer is Riddick Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2020 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want everybody to have a great, safe, fun, amazing weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday with Chris Bledsoe, Part 2. It's Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Everybody be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.